What are we?
Are we going to start?
Episode 5?
Yeah, let's
episode
fucking get
5.
on it.
Episode 5.
so
Got
quick.
Matty here, got Shawnee here. I'm JP. Episode 5 of the Dropouts podcast. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes, sir.
New scene.
New scene. Yeah,
scene.
we're just trialing different settings. We were at 180 Gym last week. Thank you, 180, of course. And we thought it worked really well. For those of you that listened to episode 4, you might have realized it. It flowed probably our best one so far.
Yeah.
And we think it was because there was no laptops. We were nice and close to each other. So we thought,
talking to
sack
each
the
other.
table, sack the laptops. And so here we are. We're talking relationships today, which will be
Interesting topic.
Interesting. Big topic. A lot to talk about relationships. So,
So much to
we'll
talk
get
about.
what we can in the time that we have. But,
100%.
yeah.
Kick us off, Shawnee. What's your
What's on your
relationship
mind,
like?
monkey bud?
Girlfriend? Single?
Yep. Single. I was married.
You came
well,
in. Oh, nice.
Well, hey, what's that,
I
guys?
was going to say so.
Right.
I swear it might have been a barbell, but I swear it looked like a hickey on your neck. That's 2 weeks ago.
No,
in the gym.
it was a kettlebell.
Who's that?
Let's leave it at that.
Oh, the old kettlebell.
kettlebell
Yeah,
is
you and
holding it
Ari.
up.
Maybe him and Ari in a relationship.
Yeah, well,
Both
maybe.
single.
Maybe, you never know. But no, yeah, obviously relationships is a big thing. There's lots of different relationships that we can cover. But I actually want to talk about to start with, get it straight off the bat.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
This first relationship that I had when I first came to Australia, that I had with this girl, and it was probably like the first one as a young adult, I guess, where I was like, oh man, this is like a real relationship. Because I had relationships before when I was in my teenage years and coming through when I turned 18, etc. But they were just like, very short term. But this relationship was significant for me because it was the first time and the only time that I've been cheated on.
Oof.
Oh.
How old were you?
I moved over to Australia when I was 20 years old. So
Yeah,
I think it might have been
yeah.
21, 22, I think at the time. So anyway, I was, how I met this girl, I was in King's Cross. This was back in the King's Cross days.
First red
Of course
flag.
you were.
Hey, where it used to go off back in the day. And I was in a club called Empire, which was a hip hop club. So I met this girl, hooked up at the club, and then we exchanged numbers, as you do. And then, we ended up catching up after that. And then ended up just seeing each other for a while, and then made it official, boyfriend and girlfriend. So we were going out. It was great. Again, for me, it was sort of that first proper relationship that I was in.
What made it proper? What made it feel different?
Probably one, because I really liked her.
Yeah, okay.
I was a full I really like this girl. We were actually going on dates and actually seeing each other regularly. So
Yeah, okay.
like before in previous relationships, it was just fuck around,
Hooking up
whatever,
and shit. Yeah. You don't go out in public that much.
No, that's right. Yeah, and back then there was no social media. Oh, actually, there was Facebook. Facebook just came around, so there wasn't that whole
Bebo, MySpace.
Viber.
Do you remember Bebo Live? Anyway,
Bebo before that was
yeah.
good, yeah. So that was pretty much the reason, and I guess I really liked this girl as well. And I think we had this conversation where I asked her to be my girlfriend. I actually asked her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny. So we were together for about 6 months, and I remember I went back to New Zealand for a trip to see my family, and then we were talking on the phone, and she says to me at the end of the conversation, and I'm not sure if she had been drinking or something, but she was like, "Oh, I love you," and I was like, "Oh." And no one's ever said that to me.
Was the
no
chat
other
like a
female.
normal chat?
Yeah, just
Regular chat?
Just
Okay.
regular chat, catching
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
And then she said at the end of the conversation,
Wow.
she said, "I love you."
And neither of you had said it before.
No. And again, we'd only been together for a short amount of time. And I didn't have any feelings towards her like that. Obviously now I know what love is with regards to my previous relationship,
Yes.
what that felt like. But at that time I was like, oh, I don't know. And then everyone's like, don't just say you love somebody,
For the sake
just
of
for the
it,
sake of it.
yeah.
So I said I love you back.
Oh, good on you.
Even though I didn't know, but that sort of cemented for me was like, oh, okay, this is something
Proper
moving
thing.
forward.
This is real.
This is real, right? So came back to Australia. We were going out again. This was about 6 months, maybe 7 months, and then she went back. She was a country girl living in Sydney.
Yeah.
So she went back to where she lived for the weekend, and then I didn't hear from her over the weekend. And
that was out of character.
Yeah, it was strange because I was messaging her as well.
Yeah.
So she came back. I think she was coming back on the Monday of the weekend that she was away, and then she calls me, and then she was off, and I was like,
Sounded weird.
short answers, etc. And I was like, oh, is everything okay? And she said, oh, I hooked up with my ex. And I was like,
Broke that over the phone.
And I was quiet. I was like, silent.
Did you ask her like what's like before that? Were you like, oh, what's up? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Did you get it? You had to like get it
Well,
out of her,
I
or?
didn't like ask why it felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, like to myself, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a bit weird.
Yeah.
And then she broached it. She's like, oh, I've got to tell you something.
Fuck.
And then she said that, and then I was like, oh, like, I don't know. I didn't really know what to think at that time. I didn't say anything after that. She goes, oh, I want to like meet up so we can talk about it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So we ended up setting a time to meet. I think it was at Central Station at a cafe. And once I got off the phone, I was like sitting there and I had like two sets of feelings, right?
Yeah,
Two sets of feelings. Like the first set was I was feeling like angry and annoyed and frustrated, and that was based upon like my beliefs and my morals. Like you don't do that to people.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
That's only natural, though.
That's not what you do. Like how do you do that, right? So and now because that's my belief. Like you know you don't do that. And the other side of it was like my ego and my pride.
Yeah.
Like sadness and like, oh man, like what did I do? Like how come? Like, you know, so there's two sets that I was thinking. But then after that, like I sort of got to a point where I was like, bro, oh well, we've only been together 6 months. Who gives a shit? Like whatever, let's move on.
So did you end up going out to meet her and chat with that discussion? Because, you know, I wouldn't blame you if you said, you know, there's nothing more to talk about. I don't really want to speak to you anymore. Khalas.
I felt like I was sort of trying to put this brave face on, right? Like, nah, sweet, all good. I'll go. We'll chat about it, and then whatever happens. So then when I got there, I had this like bravado, right? I was like sitting there, and then we said hello and stuff, and then like at the drop of a hat, there was this whole thing in my mind, and I didn't act like this, but it was almost like, why'd you do it? Yeah. Why'd you do it to me? What'd I do?
Badly.
Good on you for even like doing that, because I feel like the pride, like I don't know, maybe I think to myself, maybe my pride would have got the better of me, but like I wouldn't even want to show or
any sort of
be
emotion.
that vulnerable. I would just be like, no, fuck you. Yeah. I'm out, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So good on you for it.
Well, again, it's the first time, like, and this is sort of type of relationship, and also the first time I'd been cheated on, I guess, and only time. So yeah, went there. She told me, and I just kept being like, oh, like how come, like how, like again, going back to my morals and beliefs, like you don't do that to somebody, especially when you're in that type of relationship. Like you don't intentionally hurt somebody like that.
Yep.
So so that was a very interesting, and we sort of continued on, but not really as like a proper boyfriend girlfriend.
You just continue to hang out together.
Just hang out and stuff like that. But then it just ended up fading off.
Okay.
So that was a pretty intense sort of relationship that I had when I first came over here. Again, it was like that first like initial relationship that I had as a sort of young adult. And then it just ended like.
Would you say that was like true heartbreak for you, or have you experienced maybe like, you know, more difficult things in relationships with other women, or was that?
Well, that was my first time at that stage, but then obviously like with regards to my marriage.
Yeah.
I've been separated from my ex for the last 2 years, almost coming up to 2 years. That was like.
That was hard.
That's been the biggest one, obviously.
Yeah.
Definitely trust that, because like I said, that was like a 6 month thing, 7 month.
Yeah.
And when I did say I love you to that girl,
feelings weren't probably there.
I just said it like.
Yeah.
But then, and that's what I was gonna say, like, you know, with a relationship, if you're like with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, whatever, like, what is it like to actually feel like you?
This bloke's face. No, go on.
What does it actually feel like when you actually love somebody?
Yeah.
Like, what is that feeling?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you may have felt that before, JP. You've obviously felt that.
Yeah, that's I don't know, and that's the thing. I think that like obviously when you're younger, you think about it as like purely and simply to do with like how do I literally feel towards this person, and I think as you start to get older and you know. I know a little bit. You probably know even more. You know, Maddie, you're probably experiencing it from time to time too. But the point is that like I feel like as you get older, you start to realize that like love is more than just obviously the feeling, and that goes back to even I don't even know this extensively, but the Greek word for love is agape, and they talk about how there's 5 different types of agape love. There's like. And it's got something to do with the way that you demonstrate, like you actually
language.
Show love, like as opposed to just. Feel like you're in love with someone or in whatever.
How do you show
it? Like love means more than just that feeling, and I feel like, everyone kind of learns that as they get older. And, obviously now that I'm married, I know that that's more than just kind of how I feel towards someone, but it's okay. Well, how do I actually show love? How do I demonstrate love to this person in the way that they like to receive love?
Yeah.
And, you know, and recognizing that is obviously really important, right? Like the way that Kristen receives love is very different to the way that I receive love. For her, it might be just, you know, love, affection, being there for her. But for me, it might be a sense of, you know, maybe, you know, acts of service, as, you know, as we say, you know, her cooking for me, or even her making me feel respected, making me feel like a man, powerful, you know. And I was talking about this the other day, actually with a cousin of mine, and we're talking about how, you know, there are people out there who, I think when men, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but it just came to mind. So off we go.
Let's go.
Go down the rabbit hole.
We're talking about how, like, you know, and obviously I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of like things like, you know, mental illness and people with, you know, depression, anxiety, that sort of stuff. And talk about how, like, when women go through things like depression, and I'm not a fucking psychologist or psychiatrist, by the way, so let me speak.
None of
just,
us are.
Yeah. But you know, when women go down that route, a lot of the time, you know, I'm not saying you're prescribing love and affection, but a lot of the time that's what it is, right? Be there for them, support, love. Yeah. Whereas, you know, for men, not for all men, but for I think a lot of men, it's probably less to do with that. And a lot of men, I feel like when they get into that place of, like, you know, being upset, or, you know, in relationships, or they go through depression or what have you, people are always trying to be there for them and support them and say, I love you and you matter. But really,
they don't necessarily need
that. They need to be told. They need to be, a lot of the time I feel like men need to feel like they're powerful.
They do.
They need to feel like they're
purposeful.
respected.
Yeah.
They have purpose, that they, and when I say powerful, I don't mean it in the sense that, like, you know, macho man destroy.
But you don't have to then go and, you know, cover yourself for the things that you said. You can say these things unapologetically, because I think, you know, a man and a woman, when in a strong relationship together, have and serve their own purposes and roles. And I think there's nothing wrong with having that masculine and that divine feminine together. Right. I think that's what makes up a beautiful relationship.
True. But I just feel like there's also, like, there's varying degrees of it, right? I'm very conscious that I feel like I am a traditional manly man, whereas I know men in my life that have wives and have girlfriends or whatever, that are just different. Like, maybe even sometimes their woman is more assertive and more dominant than they are. Right. So, and I know to those men for a fact that matters less to them than it does to me. So that's why I'm saying, I'm not saying it in the sense
everyone's
that
different in terms of,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
I literally know people close to me that are like that, like really close to me, and
more
they're
affectionate,
100% like, you know, there's nothing not manly about them, but in the sense that their woman is just more assertive, she's just more dominant. Maybe, you know, she kind of, you know, what we would say maybe wears the pants in this particular instance, whatever, you know? Anyway, sorry, I know we got off on a huge tangent.
Yeah, but when did you actually feel like you felt that love? Like, what did it feel like for you? Like, when you in that type of relationship with like Kristen, obviously. I have a, what did you feel?
I have a very distinct memory, actually, when Kristen and I were going to Royal National Park. This is one of the times where I was like, I love this girl, you know, like, and one of the key things for me was, like, I could hang out with this girl all the time. That was obviously a key thing, but I remember this one specific moment. We were driving to Royal National Park, we were nearly there, and we're blasting out Maroon 5, like, just fucking Adam Levine was going off. And we were just pumping those songs. I think we were like eating strawberries or grapes or something, and we're just pumping out those songs, and I don't know, that just was a distinct moment for me where I kind of felt it. But I think that, like, look, if I want to think logically speaking, the biggest thing for me was, like, one, I can see myself spending time with this person a lot and all the time.
Be yourself. Like, you know,
I know that's not like profound, but like just straight out, like, for me, one of the biggest things maybe prior to that was, like, I don't necessarily know, like, I love hanging out with the boys. That's all the time. You know what I mean? Me and my cousins used to have this thing where we used to say, you know, like, people used to say home is where the heart is. We used to say home is where the boys are.
That's it.
just for, you know, for a laugh, but also partly being serious. But I don't really see any girl that I could spend that much time with where I could be like,
and not get sick of it,
not get bored, not get, and almost part of me was like afraid. I'm like, I don't want to get sick of this girl, maybe girls that I talked to in the past. So I almost didn't want to spend as much time with them. Whereas for her, it was very much like, and I feel like maybe with girls that I'd kind of dated previously, there was an infatuation from day fucking 4. I was infatuated with them. You know, whereas I feel like very much with Kristen, and I've told her this a few times actually. At the beginning, I was like, What, you know, I was like, oh, she's all right. We'll see how we go. We'll just see how it plays out. And then second day, and then third day, and then build. And that's how I knew it was real because I didn't have that.
It wasn't novelty.
It wasn't that instant infatuation, instant whatever you want to call it, lust, any of that. It was like, let's give it a go. And then as I saw her more and more, my affection and desire to want to be around her was more and more and more and more and more. And yeah, I mean, that's how. And I feel like, I'm not saying this is the relation, what I drew between the two, but I mean, I feel like even the same with me when it comes to my religious life is that I was never like, you know, I'm a Christian, but I was never, obviously I was brought up in it and it's kind of by default what you do. And then I kind of feel like I moved away from my religion a bit.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I feel like maybe a couple of years ago, I started kind of building it back, and little bit by little bit, I was like, got closer and closer. And yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd draw that comparison because I feel like that is as real as for me as it is like, you know, when it comes to my relationship with my wife.
Mine was actually a feeling, like an actual physical feeling.
Oh,
Like, yeah. So obviously now it's changed now, obviously my circumstance, but when I first like knew that I loved my ex, like when I first knew, and I liked it, obviously, like you said, like it started building up. You want to spend more time with this person. You start thinking about this person a lot. You can't wait to get a message, all this sort of stuff like that. But so me and my mate went to we went to Bondi, and we're having drinks out there. I think it was a Christmas party, and we're getting smashed, etc. And then I asked if she can come pick me up, and she picked me up from the hills, came and picked me up. Well, I was sitting in the front seat. My mate was in the back, like crook as, and I don't know. I turned to her, and I had this feeling in my chest. Like this real, like overwhelming feeling in my chest while I was looking at her, and I was like, "Fuck, what is this?"
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I was like, "Fuck, what is it?" I was like, "No, I'm drunk. Like this is not real." And I kept staring at her, and I was like, "Fuck!" And I don't know whether it was like because she had come pick us up, she looked like, you know, like whatever. But so I was like, "No, that's nothing." But then I was gonna go to New Zealand to visit my family, and then she ended up coming. Like this was only like we only been together for like 4 months. She surprised me. She bought a ticket.
Wow.
Had to come, and I was like, "Oh fuck."
You could have taken that 2 ways though. You could have been like, "Whoa."
Well, yeah, 100%. Yeah. But like you said, I was already like in this moment where I was like, "Fuck!" Like I really like this girl. So anyway, we went
What a
there.
feeling when she bought the ticket, bro. That would have been the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
She's like, you'd be like, because it just validates all your feelings. You're like, wow, she actually likes me as much as I like her.
Yeah, and you know, we went there, and because I'm really close to my family, we went and like it was my aunties and uncles. It was during Christmas as well. She met my dad, my sister, etc. So we were there the first night we were there. We were having a few drinks and stuff like that, and then we went about to go to bed, and I had the exact same feeling as I had like in my chest, like this overwhelming, just like warmth, like fuck, like here it is again, like oh my god, and it was like all these tingles, and then I was like, and I turned to her and I go, I love you, and then
Just like that.
She goes, thank you.
Oh no! Oh no, wrong one. Oh, what the fuck are these sounds, bro? Oh no!
It was funny. Like,
Surely not long enough. Not long after. She must have.
Oh yeah, so we ended up going back to. So ended up. I was
No,
about.
I want to know what immediately happened after.
I laughed.
And then?
I started laughing and then we just chatted and went to bed. Cried in my pillow. No. But then the next she was leaving and I was going to stay. So a couple of days later, and then she said it at the airport when she was leaving.
Oh, thank God.
So anyway, yeah.
Salvaged.
But, yeah. So that was it for me. Like it was that feeling, like this really strange, overwhelming feeling. And I was like, fuck, I've never felt this before. So that's how I knew, like, from that point in time. But obviously it's circumstances changed now. But
On that point of saying thank you, could I just say, you just reminded me of a mate of mine, J Ray, who's actually been listening to the podcast. A shout out, J Ray. And he wouldn't, I hope he wouldn't mind me telling this very quick story. We started LinkedIn together, working in sales development, you know, in the trenches, you know, on the phones, banging the phones away. And he was going out with this girl who's now married to Ellen. They got married last year. You know, he would tell us about, you know, them going out and he really liked her and what have you. And he was saying like, man, it was going on for ages. And normally it's the girl who's like, hey, like, what is this? What's going on with this?
Where are we going
with this?
What's the trajectory?
Yeah, exactly right. Like, what is this? And anyway, man, he keeps coming in. They've been going out for a while now. And he's like, man, it's good, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And obviously I'm pissing myself. I'm like, bro, all right, just talk to her. Just say it casually, because obviously they were together. They were, you know, doing chat fair or whatever. You know what I mean? Anyway, so he comes in and we talk about it, and he was sitting right next to me. So we're pumping him up, all right, bro. Just like go for it. You know, say how you feel. See what she says. So anyway, he comes back the next week, bro. Mind you, it's even funnier if you know this guy is huge. He's like 6'4".
Wow.
You know, Aussie guy, stock. Like his legs are like tree trunks.
Big boy.
But like the BFG, the nicest guy you ever met in your life.
Yeah, they always are. Most.
But you know, a bit like
What's a bit big
playful.
big friendly giant. Yeah. Come on, bro.
That's BFC. That's
fucking
BFC.
Anyway, he comes back and then he's like, "Yeah, bro, we were just sitting in bed one day and I was talking to her about it, and she's just like, no, I'm kind of cool with it. This is just how it is." So he comes in and we're all just pissing ourselves like, "No, bro, it's all right."
Bloke.
Anyway, now they're married, so
yeah.
Mabruk.
Oh,
anyway.
no way.
No. In my head, I'm like, bro, this girl is ruthless.
Yeah,
Anyway.
straight up. That's good, but that's what you want, bro. You want girls that are straight up, I reckon.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, that's just funny little story.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a different position than you boys. Actually, I haven't been in a relationship, formal relationship. Always dated.
Never
Never had a girlfriend.
How long's the longest you've dated for?
Oh, you know, a couple of weeks, you know, a month.
Oh,
month
wow.
or two. I think for my intentions were never pure at that stage. I was always in it for.
But remembering, you're still very young.
Correct. Yeah, I'm 24 in
24.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
On the 10th
You're
of
at least
June.
30.
At least 30. Yeah, 24 in June. So, yeah, I think the intentions were always very self-interested intentions of mine, hence why nothing's ever progressed past the point of, you know, that month or 2 months or whatever it was. You know, also in it for, you know, there was physical reasons and whatever it was, trying to please my own self. But I think as time goes by and as time progresses, of course I want to find, you know, a beautiful girl to make my wife eventually. But definitely a lot of personal development, which I've been on for the last, you know, year or two, and continuing on that so that, you know, when I'm in position to attract the right person, that I'm in, you know, a great place mentally and physically, spiritually and emotionally, so that I have the capacity to, you know, be in a great relationship. Because, you know, nowadays you see a lot of divorce, you see a lot of relationships splitting up. And I think, you know, probably social media has a lot to do with that, when people are constantly comparing, you know, their own lives to others, and, you know, they're posting the highlight reel constantly, and naturally there's going to be that comparison, and it's a little bit difficult, man. I see a lot of, you know, younger girls, and I don't know if the beauty and draw of marriage is what it once was, if you get what I'm saying.
It's a very interesting topic,
right?
Actually.
Yeah.
Well, how so? How do you see it?
It's a big topic these days.
It is a big topic.
About it.
Look, personally, and this is again my beliefs, I just feel like marriage is such, you know, it goes beyond, you know, yourself and that person. In my opinion, marriage should include a spiritual being, i.e. God, to intervene between you, to hold you both accountable, so that you have some, I guess, moral or system of lawfulness to live your life by, and to live according and abiding by. And I think, is it a coincidence? I don't think it is, that as the rate of spirituality and religion has gone down, the rate of divorce has gone up, you know, in equal parts. So is that something to do with that? You know, I think so, but it's interesting to see. But yeah, in terms of relationships, I've got such a great family around me, and that's something I'm very. Excuse me for my voice as well. It's
sexy voice.
It's got the raspy voice. Nah, it's not by choice. I'm drinking fucking English breakfast tea right now to help me get through the rest of the podcast. Give me 1 sec.
But that's a good thing, eh? Like, obviously, that's another type of relationship that I think you might be going into, the family dynamic.
Yeah,
definitely.
Extremely important.
But that's an interesting, like, you know, it's an interesting topic around. Like, I've got mates who, like, will say, and, you know, I've got mates who will say that, like, off the back of what they have seen with their own parents, and, you know, a mate of mine will openly admit and say that, like, yeah, as a result of, like, what I've seen, that's a big part as to why I don't think I'll ever, like,
which is sad
married,
as well.
You know? Like,
which is sad, because if they've seen a failed marriage, it can either have one of two things. It can either mean like, wow, I really want to go pursue that because there was a lack of that in my family.
I want that ideal that I didn't kind of get.
So my parents got divorced. My sister got divorced.
My parents are divorced as well.
Yeah, but even going into my relationships, or going into a relationship and thinking about marriage, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get married at some point in time. But my thinking was, I'm never going to get a divorce.
Yeah, okay.
But then here we are.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think, like I said, I think if there's not, and again, this is my belief, so it's not meant to trigger anyone, but I just believe if God is not in that relationship, standing as a moral, I guess, compass, you know, because I think love is selfless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you go talk about acts of service and doing things. I'm sure there's times where, you know, you've had arguments with your wife, and I think if you guys weren't people of faith, it would be so easy to just be like,
I'm telling you, and again, obviously it's like Maddie said, it's a personal thing, but you know, when and I know that my wife, like Kristen hasn't said this to me specifically, but she knows that whenever we go on a 10 Mass on a Sunday, for some reason and we hear a sermon, we come out with a different energy towards each other.
It's amazing.
Like and again, like mind you, let's also keep in mind that like there's also been, as much as there's been, you know, the decline and what have you, for those that aren't religious in any way, there's also been this shift towards spirituality through other elements, whether it be like yoga or meditation, and those people who are big on that, they really hold tight to it as to how they kind of how it kind of not governs their life, but in a way like that is their refuge, and I find that really interesting because obviously in its purest sense, like all that sort of stuff, when you think about, you know, yoga, meditation, a lot of it links back to religion, you know, in whether it be Buddhism, whether it be whatever it may be. So I'd find that kind of that spiritual element, however you look at it, you know, whether or not you're like a religious person in the true sense, or whether you consider yourself a spiritual person and not link that to
a deity or God.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever your perspective may be, whatever you follow,
But like we're talking about, like, you know, the significant partner or girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband aside, I think foundationally, family and relationships have made up a big part of who I am. And I think naturally as people and as humans and individuals, we tend to relate who we are as a person back to, you know, our clan, our cluster. And that goes back to, you know, growing up in the wild, we go back and we huddle and we take shelter and refuge within our family. So yeah, definitely my mum's side I've got 3 uncles, like I've mentioned earlier on the podcast, very, very, very close with them. They're quite younger. And I think having them as, you know, really strong men in my life has always, you know, provided me with an idea or at least a point of reference as to what a man looks like and what a man is supposed to look like. Someone who's strong with their family, someone who's a provider, someone who essentially is the breadwinner. Not to say that, you know, their wives or their counterparts don't provide towards their house, but I think in the traditional sense, they're at home, they're looking after the children, they're taking them to school, you know, providing the meals. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to see. And we've almost demonized that today, and as if to say that, you know, masculinity and femininity, like we're equal. And it's like, no, men and women are definitely 100% not equal, and not in the negative way that, you know, people could see a snippet of this clip and then misconstrue to play to their agenda or to whatever their you know, their political beliefs are. But I just think men and women are not equal, but they each individually serve their own beautiful role, and I think that's so important.
They contribute equally, but in different ways. That's right, and but mind you, like I think what's interesting is that you know, it is different nowadays, right? Like in the sense that the way that we go, like, I mean, you know, our parents, you know, it's funny because Kristen and I'll be at home and I'll be like, you know, obviously I'm used to, my mum didn't work. So, you know, she was looking after us 3 kids. I've got 2 younger sisters, Marina and Grace, and she'd do the washing, she'd do the cleaning, whereas Kristen is working full time. She is running a flower business on the side. Yeah. So, like there's an element of like the dynamic has changed, but obviously because I've, you know, grown up in a more traditional household, my expectations are like, well, I kind of do expect this to be done. Well, that's and like, don't get me wrong, I contribute. Like, absolutely, I'll do the washing and, you know, hang up the washing or whatever.
Yeah, we see you clean.
But the fact is that, like, you know, like that's what's ingrained in me because that's the kind of the background I've come from.
So stories I think, that you grew up with.
Yeah, and I think that there's that, you know. I think that that's also kind of disrupted what's gone on because you see couples nowadays where, you know, the woman's like she is the breadwinner, like in the sense that she's just for whatever reason, one reason or another, because she's had a really great career and the guy maybe, you know, she maybe has she's, you know, worked her way up the ranks or what have you. Like even my auntie, for example, she, like, you know, they were in Abu Dhabi and she was like the CFO of, you know, New York University and was you know, and mind you, she's still taken on that more traditional role in her household. But it's just interesting, and we see obviously now that has kind of changed over time. You know, as definitely. And I think that's contributed partly to it.
Yeah, something I think is just an interesting point as well. And I know, Shawnee, you're going to touch on your relationship with your mum a little bit later in the podcast, or, you know, whenever we get to that point. But I think for men, you know, having a strong relationship with your mother, or even if that didn't, you know, go to plan early on, at least, you know, having that element of forgiveness so that you can, you know, heal that relationship. I think it's so critical and so crucial to have, for men at least, to have that that bond with their mother, because then they're able to then translate that to, you know, the partner that they then, you know, find in the future. And I think the same for women, having that strong relationship, that strong father figure in their life, so that they can, you know, they don't have those abandonment issues, and they're not choosing the guys that, you know, maybe are providing that validation that they didn't get earlier in their life from their dad or their father figure. I think, you know, there's a big generation of young African American guys that don't have that relationship, you know, with their mother, and it goes on to then see, you know, really, really bad downfalls later in their life. And same with young women nowadays, with maybe not having that strong father figure in their life. And they're trying to play catch up later in life.
Yeah, no, 100%. And mine was a little bit different because, as you just alluded to before, with my relationship with my mum. So my parents separated when I was young. I think I was six, maybe 7. And then about a year later, my mum got depression. So she moved from Auckland, where we grew up. She moved to Brisbane. And my sister and myself stayed with my father. There was a little bit of talk about maybe splitting us, but then they ended up
Keeping us together,
which was obviously the right decision. So my father became like he was the father, and I don't want to say this, but to an extent the mother as well.
Yeah,
because we were with him 24/7. So I would see him do both roles, right? So he would go and be the worker, he'll come home, he'll cook, he'll clean, he'll do all these types of things like that. Although when my mum left, like, yeah, we definitely still kept in touch. Like, we wrote letters and we spoke on the phone, and we went and visited her whenever we could. Like, we went for Christmases and things like that. But there was a bit of a disconnect with regards to having that mother figure. And like, I love my mum. I absolutely love my mum, right? So whenever I go see her, she lives in Gold Coast now. I love giving my mum a hug, and I love sort of having that idea of being a mama's boy, like that. But growing up, there was still that sort of disconnect, where I guess to a degree I was angry with what happened, parents getting divorced, and then my mum moving away, and it was difficult because when we'd go to school, the teachers would always say, "Give this to your mum, give this to your mum, give this to your mum," and I would just be like, "Oh, my mum lives, or whatever." So those types of things like that. So I mean, obviously, it was difficult for both my parents as well. But as a youngster, again, we've spoken about this before. Like, your stories, that you've been told and what you see is comes up to your beliefs and values. So the one thing that was really wasn't good, but the one thing that I got from that though was wanting to be a great father because of what my father had done.
Yeah.
That was something that I sort of took on board from being able to do those two sort of roles. So being a father and having a relationship like that at some time down the track has always been something to me that's been like, yeah, that's something that I really want to do, and I really want to be involved in. And I remember when I was PTing about 6 years ago, and I had a client that had a little daughter, and she was 2, I think. So I'll train her, and then she'll be playing in the kids area. And I remember distinctly like watching the mum and daughter together, and I got a little bit emotional. Yeah. And I was like, "Fuck, man! Like, I can't
pull on the old heartstrings, eh?"
Yeah. I was like, I can't wait till like the time my wife has our child. Like, that's going to be so incredible because then I could be that father figure that I grew up with my dad being. So that was something with regards to that relationship. But again, with regards to my mum not being able to have that strong relationship with her, it probably affected me in a lot of ways, but I was very stubborn about it. I was very like, "Oh, well, you left." Like,
you had your walls up.
You had my walls up. And my mum always used to say to me, like, "Sean, like, you got to talk about it at some point in time." Because I never actually spoke about it wholly until about 2 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Which was quite hard for my mum because my mum wanted to be able to express why she did it. Yeah. Like, this is why I left. Like, these are the reasons, like, so it's almost like I was like, "No, don't worry about it." Like, even though I saw her or we visited and stuff like that. And the funny thing was, like, whenever she would ask me, for example, like, very simple, "Oh, how are you doing? Like, how are you? Are you okay?" I'll get angry, like, drop of a hat. I was like, "Stop."
I feel that, bro.
Yeah, honestly,
I'll get very defensive. So for me, looking back now, I thought how much of, I don't want to say this, but how much of an asshole I was at that time as a kid. And it sort of pains me to feel that I was like that towards my mum because she had to go and do this thing. Yeah. Because there were certain reasons behind why, right? And there were specific reasons that I understand now that I'm like, yeah, mum, like, I respect your decision and why you had to do it. Yeah. But then there were also people in the background, like, cursing her out for it. Yeah. And like, it was massive, like, leaving your kid. Even now, I talk to people and they're like, "How could your mum do that?"
Yeah.
But you feel torn, like, bro.
It must be difficult as a parent though. Like, I was even, I was watching a show yesterday and I was just thinking like, it must be so difficult as a parent because until your kid becomes of age where they can actually understand. Because as a kid, it's just like, where is she? Why did she go? Like, and then you know that resentment. Whereas, and that kind of very binary statement of like,
good or bad.
fact is not here, not here. Therefore bad. Therefore
you're not here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas, like, obviously, as a parent, it takes a long time for that child to get to a point where they mature and they actually understand. Well, hey, now you've been through shit of your own. Now you can understand what's gone. And even for you, like obviously with your marriage and your separation and stuff like that, you know, you can now have a greater appreciation, you know, for stuff like that, I assume.
For decisions, 100%. And like so last year I saw a psychologist first time, and we can talk about that on another podcast.
As with your, not with your ex?
No, just myself. So because it was during COVID, and I was doing my life coaching course, and I was going to get into a mindset coaching. I thought, man, I should go and
do coaching.
You know, go see someone to try to sort out what I've had gone through in the past. And my mum, again, always said to me, she's like, Sean, you've got to go, like, you got to see someone. She'll never try to force it on me, but she's like, I can't wait till you actually have the time to go and see someone and, you know, be able to talk about these things that you went through. Because she always talks about it like, she's like, Sean, it was a traumatic experience. Like what you saw, what you did, all this sort of stuff like that. So I remember I called her. I was like, oh, mum, like, you know, I think I'm going to see a psychologist about the past. Yeah. And she was like fucking wrapped. She was like, oh, that's so good. Like, oh, you know, like, you know, all that sort of stuff. So once I did that and went through that process, which was good, found out a few things about myself with regards to like some abandonment issues, self-soothing, all this sort of stuff like that. Again, we can talk about it on a different podcast. But man, the next conversation I had with my mum was like 3-4 hours.
Wow.
The longest conversation we've had.
Wow.
Like ever. Like on the phone, like obviously
it's probably very healing for you.
So do you think that's a result of like you came out of that session with a greater amount of empathy for her?
Yeah. Okay. I think I felt that over the last few years, but being able to broach it and then being open to it, I think that was a different thing, kettle of fish. But then I said to my mum, I was like, Mum, I'm ready to listen, like, you know. And again, I felt bad. I was like, you know, what a dick. Like, I was like, Mum, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever. But then, you know, being able to say, well, if I love this person, if this person means something to me, then man, I should like let my doors down and go, hey, Mum, like let me know like what happened and how did it go and all that sort of stuff like that. So yeah, it was good. Like, it was really good. And even my sister as well, I had a 2-hour conversation with her about it because we went through the same stuff, obviously. And there's still a lot of stuff around that to work on. But I mean, that relationship in the beginning was obviously quite strained.
Which relationship?
My mum.
Yep.
But now it's like, you know, I want to go visit her more. She lives in Gold Coast. I want to go visit her more. When I do get to that stage when I want to have kids, I want her to be massively involved. Yeah. Like, because she missed out on a lot of, you know, me growing up, my sister growing up as well. So yeah, so that was that's a big relationship in my life that has had some consequences, some good, but now coming into some bad, but some good coming.
How did your relationship, your marriage with your ex and your relationship with her influence the relationships around you with people like your sister, your mum,
In what way?
Oh, just like, you know, I just feel like a lot of the time you can have, and everyone knows this, right? Like you can have someone around you, a partner or someone you're seeing or what have you, that are very, they're always trying to bridge the gaps between people and bring people together. Then there are the people who are always going to be like, nah. Screw them.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, and again, this might not be relevant at all, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, she was actually really good. Like, I think the first time we sort of opened up and spoke, my mum told her about the stuff.
Ah, your mum, she sounds like she's really open with talking about stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we'd been together for some time. Like, we'd been married and stuff. I think we did 5 or 6 years, and we went to Gold Coast for a holiday, and then we met up with her, and then I know they went for tea or something, and then she came back and goes, oh, like, I think you really need to hear what your mum has to say.
She opened that door for you.
And I was like, I wasn't upset about it. I was like, if you talk to her about it, that's. I thought that was cool. I was like, great. Like, very cool. You're getting along with my mum. Awesome. But then we actually sat down, and that was sort of the first time she opened up about what went on with her and my dad, etc. How that happened, and then I think that was a catalyst for me to grow a little bit more over those next couple of years.
Catalyst. Sorry, we just have to shout out that word, catalyst. Ding, 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 That's like the word of the podcast, catalyst.
Such a good word, though.
We were laughing about it before.
Right,
Matty was like, are you going to say catalyst this episode?
That's your word.
Define catalyst. The reason for change.
I feel like in
Yeah,
science,
it's like science, yeah.
in science, when you had the Bunsen burner out, and
Those
you
are
had
the
the
days.
fucking, all the liquid nitrogen or whatever. The catalyst is the thing that causes
The
the
ignition
reaction.
chemical reaction.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
Continue, Shawnee.
So that was it. That was the catalyst for me to open my eyes and go, okay, well, I need to be a bit more open to this relationship, and so that was it. Yeah, that was good. And then we went to this new phase.
And again, obviously, conscious that we hadn't like necessarily talked a lot about this before, but like, do you want to? I'm personally curious as to. We haven't talked. Actually, funnily enough, we got into a long time since I'd known you. A long time being a year, and I'm like, I didn't even know that you had been, that you were separated and you'd been married for so long. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm personally curious to hear about that, but again, I want to make sure that you're comfortable, kind of sharing and shit like that.
Yeah, of course. And look, with regards to time, 100%, I'm happy to talk about it, but with regards to where I'm at the moment, I didn't really say too much about it when it happened. Like it'd been 2 years. Like I didn't do like a Facebook post or Instagram post or anything like that. I actually said it on my family group chat like about 2 months ago. I was like, oh, hey guys, just so you know, you probably know, but this has happened, and they all just messaged back going, yeah, we know. Like, yeah. We assumed. So, but yeah, I mean, we can talk about that another time in terms of that type of thing. Cool. But I'm happy to be open and talk about it. But I think I just want to make sure that I'm saying it from my perspective. I'm not wanting to talk for.
Of course.
That's
very respectful and
wise.
And I love that.
I thought more, and again, I don't know if we have time for it today, but I think it was more from the perspective of like, I think one thing that before I even got into a long-term relationship was, it's like totally uncharted waters for so many people, and for everyone. When you get into when you get married, it's uncharted territory, especially for. Yeah, I mean, and even for me, like, not only had we got married, but we didn't like live together or anything either, right? So just from the perspective of like, and again, we don't have to cover it off today, but just to hear kind of your thoughts and your learnings from that experience in terms of like whatever happens next for you and how that will take you into whatever's next, and anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And we talked about a failure and fear and all these sorts of things like that in the last episode, and I just think when we actually separated. For the first 3 months, I was frustrated, annoyed, angry, those same feelings, and I shut down. And that comes back to what I was talking about when I had those abandonment issues and also self-soothing. So when I go through things, I feel like, I've been abandoned, I shut down, and I go into self-soothing. So I don't need anybody else to help me out. So what I mean? So I sort of go into my head. And for 3 months, I was like, and this was pretty bad, like I moved to Parramatta, during the lock, there was 2 weeks into the lockdown, 5K radius, mask outside, etc. So I had nobody. I didn't know anybody in Parramatta at the time, and I said to her, I was like, I can't have Billy at the apartment. So I didn't see Billy for 3 months as well. I literally shut it. I shut it. I cut down.
You didn't see Billy?
Billy being his dog, by the way.
My dog, by the way, my golden retriever.
They're basically they're attached at the hip.
Yeah. So, and I went through this phase, and then at the end of that 3 months, I was like, fuck, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I care about this person. Like, unfortunately this has happened, but I care about this person. Why am I acting like this? And again, that came back into when I saw a psychologist, and I said to her, I was like, I want to know why I do this. Because I've done it before in other relationships, whether it's friendships or not.
Just cut them off.
I'm very easy. I can very easily just cut off and just go live my life because I'm very good at being by myself. Based upon my past. Right?
It's comfortable
my
for you.
Leaving, etc. So, and then I was like, fuck it, I can't do this. So I ended up I'm calling and can we meet up? And I just expressed I apologized and said, man, like I've been doing this, I'm feeling this way, etc., etc., etc. And so from that point on, I took Billy for like 2 months. I was like, I've got to do my part. He's my responsibility as well. It's my responsibility as the other part of this to make it work as best as possible. And then from that time on, we just obviously started to talk a bit more and sort of reconnect, not in a way of getting back together, but just reconnect
to make it civil
from a respect level.
Because obviously when it happened, like you said, there would have been like that little bit of a tear in the start, a big tear in the fabric of the relationship.
So now at the point in time now, obviously we have Billy. I have Billy 1 week, she has Billy 1 week, so we see each other every weekend. Nice. Have conversations. Like it's very, very
civil.
Very civil.
Yeah, I can really reside with some of those things you touched on a little bit earlier. Great relationship with my mum. Great relationship, thank God, with both of my parents now. I love them very, 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 very much. But yeah, there was definitely those feelings I had, not of abandonment so much, but more, I think there was a lot of anger. And I'm only starting to realize this in the last couple of years. I've definitely been someone who carried a lot of anger. I think a lot of that comes now with forgiveness to my, from my dad. Not that,
Because your parents separated, right?
My parents separated. Always growing up, how
old were you when this?
Yeah, so I got two older brothers. So at the time that they split up, how old was I? I think I was maybe 13.
Okay.
13. Older brothers were 20 and 21 at the time. Or 20 and 22 at the time. And growing up, my parents, my dad always did a lot for the family. Always working, trying to provide, always provided a great life to us. We always went to private schools. There was always holidays at the end of the year, always had great food in the fridge, nice clothes. We had all the material things to make you...
The markers.
The markers of success, or like a beautiful family,
life.
White picket fence and all of those things. Grew up in the hills, holidays, like I said.
Nice.
Gold Coast holidays, nice pool in the backyard, all of those things. And I think growing up, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I always felt, so secure at home.
Yeah.
But it was only as I started to go sort of through my early teenage years, I started to see that rift between my mum and my dad, and saw that, there was a lot of things in their relationship that they carried that probably, from my mum's perspective at least, my dad was never sort of there emotionally for her. And I think that's always served, again, as a catalyst for me maybe to, want to have that, that relationship in the future. Dad went through a rough period. So my brother came home one night, my middle brother Michael, after drinking. He was like 16 or 17 years old. He was out on the piss, came home, opened the door, walking through, sort of the living room, and then he vomits everywhere in the lounge room. My dad hears this, sprints downstairs. He's like, "Who the fuck's that?" Runs down, get this, slips in my brother's vomit.
Oh no!
Breaks his fucking rib. Breaks his rib, and then goes to hospital. And he broke his rib that day. So my brother, the vomiting served as a big thing for my dad. So he was actually off work. He was a real estate agent at the time, and he was off work for a considerable amount of time. In that period where he was off work, he actually fell into serious depression. He'd never been off work. He could never switch off. He was always, even when we went out to dinner and went out on weekends, my relationship with my father was, I loved him and I was always around him, but he was never there. He was never present. He was never present. It was always mind on work. And, now looking back at it, I can understand why my mum felt, maybe neglected, or that there was a lack of love in that relationship, because, she maybe felt like her voice was never heard. And granted, I think for him, he thought he was doing the best thing he was for the family. He ended up... he got diagnosed with bipolar after, falling into depression, but it was actually evidence of there was bipolar way, way, way earlier, in life, probably due to a lot of things that he had seen earlier in his life. Anyway, we ended up going through a bit of a rough period as a family. He filed for bankruptcy. He lost his business. We lost the house. We lost the cars. We lost fucking everything, man.
God damn it, Michael's vomit on the floor. Sure, course.
I laughed at that as well. But that was,
he was the catalyst.
He was the big catalyst in the capital C. But I think it was either going to be that or something down the line that happened. That,
it was a ticking
time bomb.
But what was that like though? Like you say, like you had all the stuff. And then like that,
it just breaks down.
So what's going on as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old?
Well, you know what? Literally the weekend that we moved, so from our our big beautiful family home in Castle at the time, we moved to a much shitty house, still in the hills, not too far down the road, but and I'm so lucky that I have a house over my head in the first place, so I'm not going to play the victim here, but definitely a little bit less than what we were used to at the time. And I was playing New South Wales for in year 6 for like New South Wales all schools. And I went away to a camp over the weekend, and it just so happened that camp was on the weekend that we were moving houses. So I got to skip all of the process of seeing how things moving into removalist truck and moving out of the house. Moved out of the house, spent a couple more years there, and then they gathered enough money to end up purchasing in Kellyville, and we moved there in 2012 or 13. I think I was in year 7 at the time. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, their relationship was never the same. My dad was never in the same frame of mind after that. He battled depression for a significant time after that. It got to a point, I think I was maybe 14 or 15, and my mum was just, she was at her wit's end. She went and worked in retail to just keep her head above the water. My dad wasn't working at the time. Like I said, he was stuck in a depression. He was struggling to get out of bed. He was a downer, man. And it was really hard. I had a lot of resentment, I think, built up towards him because I was just seeing him like, dude, get up and go to work. Like, help out my mum. Like, why?
I didn't understand.
I didn't understand at the time.
Yeah.
I really didn't understand at the time.
And the thing is, when that happens, when men get like that, it spirals into like the attitude becomes, it sours them because there's no power, there's no like feeling of like I can provide.
Yeah.
So it all I feel like
and I think on my mum's behalf, she had a lot of she was so patient the whole relationship, but I think towards the end of it, she couldn't take it anymore, and I think my dad, bless him, and I'm not talking bad about my dad. I love him so much, especially now we have a great relationship. But I think, he didn't make the best financial decisions. So there was never, money put away for a rainy day. So I think that's where a lot of my mum's pain and anger was built up because she was like, man, we had all of these things. My dad was very, very, very successful in real estate. Yeah. And it was like all of that dried up overnight because he never put it for rainy days. There was cars and all the lavish stuff on the outside, but internally or, as a foundation, there was nothing really set there. Yeah. So we ended up kicking my dad out of the house essentially. Wow. Me and my older brothers. Mum went to Canberra for the weekend to see her brother, and we just said to my mum, we got to end this for you. We'll take care of it. And she was like, no. She had this idea built up in her head of this beautiful family that was all getting kept together. And even me at the time, I was like, Mum, like that shit's fucking gone. Like that doesn't exist here. That was gone a long time ago. That's not serving anyone here. It's not serving us. It's not serving you. It's definitely not serving my dad. Yeah. So we just got to end this. So
and kudos to your brother, because obviously your brothers would have been the
older brothers.
I don't want to use the word. I don't want to use the word catalyst. But kudos to them because they would have had to make that tough decision.
It was a very, very, very tough decision. We ended up, kicking my dad out, and I used that term very loosely, but gave him the ultimatum that they had to essentially. Well, there's no ultimatum. It was fucking get out of the house.
Yeah, go sort yourself out.
Go sort yourself out, and then we'll see what happens. And then going on from there, I know we're cutting it short on time, but it's okay.
We're good.
We've got a bit of time today. And essentially we kicked him out of the house. He went and done his thing, and I think I was in year 8 or 9 at the time. I was very sad. I was like, fuck, my dad's not like living in the house anymore. I remember him leaving. He was driving a Porsche before this happened. Like his whole life, Porsche, Beamers, nice cars. And I seen him drive off. I put his last suitcase in his boot, and he was driving some like shitty fucking car that he'd bought because he didn't have any money. It was very like
bro.
It was very immature. Like the imagery there. I remember it so vividly. It was like I gave him a hug and a kiss. I was like, all right, Dad, I'll fucking speak to you. Like when I speak to you.
See you later.
I'll see you later. And then over the course of a couple of weeks, I think maybe a month or 2 went by, and I hadn't spoken to him for a little bit, briefly off and on the phone. And then we ended up getting text messages from my dad, and they were really very, very aggressive, like bad messages, all capital letters to me, my brother, and my older brother, along the lines of "you effing mother effers, how could you take your dad out of the house?" It's really bad shit, really bad stuff. And as a kid, as a 13, 14-year-old kid, I just remember reading this and I was like, confused. Whoa, wow. Like I was it was very, very, very tough. So I don't speak to my brothers. I was like, dude, fuck, what does this mean? And then we didn't speak for maybe 4 years, years after. Yeah. We tried to have a relationship after we would, he would go and attempt to like buy our love in a way, you know what I mean? He would take us out to nice dinners and things, but that,
that wasn't what you needed.
Those words couldn't be retracted. And then that was over a series of a couple of weeks, and it really broke me, bro, because I was like, I didn't feel responsible at the time. In fact, it pained me so much to have to stand by my older brother's side and make that decision with them, even though we were just looking out for our mum, you know what I mean? So made that call, and then going through year 9, year 10, there was a lot of anger. I had so much resentment in my heart. I remember used to just crying at school all the time, just having a lot of pain. And then one afternoon I just went home. I just fucking broke shit, bro. I just fucking bashed the floors, fucking went outside, ripped everything up, smashed the bricks, punching walls, punching holes through the gyprock. I just fucking lost it, bro. Like I think it was just like bubbling up. And then so the thing that I think started to cause me and my dad to even speak again, or me and my other brothers, was, so my dad had an injury in 2019. So I'm just going to go through, this is going to sound really crazy to listeners out there.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he had an injury. So my dad got shot. Yeah, my dad got shot.
My dad got shot?
My dad got shot. My dad
With
got
a
shot
gun?
with a gun.
What the fuck? All right, let's,
So I was traveling into that, and I was a little bit reluctant to speak about this, but I'll just speak about this for full transparency because this is something I've healed from. And since we're on the topic of relationships, obviously, a formidable relationship between me and my father. This is like, again, catalyst.
yeah, but you also said that's one of the reasons you started to come.
That's right. What brought you back together?
100%. So it's something that sounds so twisted and fucked up is essentially the thing that made us heal our relationship. Because without that, then I don't know if I could have even had the opportunity or capacity to be able to forgive and have him forgive me. And
So
just
you got a
to mend that
message, you got a call.
So I was in the Philippines. I was backpacking. Did 3 weeks in the Philippines, and I did a week or two in Bali. I think I had 3 or 4 more days on the trip, and then my brother had called me. He's like, "Yo, you got to get to Melbourne. Dad's been shot." And I was like, "Yo!" Wow. I was like, "Gosh, jeez." I was like, "Okay." I didn't know what to think at the time, so jumped online, booked the next flight. I was flying from Bali to Sydney, so I ended up changing from Bali to Melbourne. Got to Melbourne, and he was in intensive care unit. So my dad got shot in the head.
Bro.
In the head. My dad got shot.
Holy.
My dad got shot in the head, and he survived.
Oh my God, bro.
So I'll touch on God a little bit later. I don't want to come across as a preacher, but I can't help but have seen what happened to him and see him survive and think there's not a God out there, because that's just, you talk about miracles. This is literally a miracle. So he got shot in the head, point blank range. Wow. Again, you can look.
I have a million questions.
To tell you the truth, I have a million questions too that still haven't been fully answered. I'll give you a quick, rundown of essentially what happened. There's some, articles on the news or whatever if you look it up. So Sid Morgan is his name. He went down to Melbourne to help a friend start a business. Again, we hadn't spoken to him for a little while at this point. Relationship turned sour between my dad and his friend who he went to go help. The business partner. His business partners. Yeah. The relationship turned sour. Apparently my dad had sent some violent threats towards these guys. They sent some threats back and went back and forth. And then they rocked up one night and my dad was staying at his friend's house. My dad's friend said to him, "Look, we don't feel comfortable staying in this house anymore. We're going to gap it. You look after the house." He left. These people showed up. There was apparently a bit of a struggle. There was a knife drawn. My dad got his thumb's no longer there on his left hand. They pulled out a gun, shot him.
Fuck.
They heard gunshots in the street, and then my dad obviously was lying on the floor, fucking dead.
Bro,
fuck.
And then
in the head,
shot in the head, ambulance. In the head.
So were these guys his business partners? Were they gangsters?
Yeah,
gangsters.
So my dad hated. So it was not a crime syndicate or anything like that. My dad was in real estate for the majority of his life. In fact, my dad's brother died of HIV. He used to be a heroin addict. So my dad always had a strong hatred and dismay for drugs and that whole scene.
Yeah.
You know what? And I wish I could give you a better account and detail and collation of the story.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't know all the details.
Yeah.
I don't care as much.
Don't want to know.
I don't really want.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, all those things are not posted. So I've read a bunch of articles and I've asked questions about it. Yeah. I think there was a bit of a conflict of interest on our behalf, like me and my brothers and our family, and the people that have done it, because they thought that then we would go and fucking kill these people, which didn't happen. They ended up getting arrested, and they claimed self-defense. They actually ended up getting off their charge, which was crazy.
But how did your dad get found? Like he got shot in the
head.
He
got shot on a street in Point Cook in Melbourne, and then neighbours called the police. His brain was fucking splattered all over the fucking...
what?
Yeah.
So he didn't graze his head.
Yeah,
fucking...
So yeah, basically. So I went to Melbourne's intensive care unit, and they basically called us to say our goodbyes because your dad's not going to make it. He's been shot. So I went into intensive care. His head was fucking blown up like a balloon. Fuck. Tongue out, fucking black eyes, very, very, very horrific. His head was bandaged up all very, very heavily. Damn. And I remember then sitting there and like I wasn't really emotional because it was just so shocking to see. And I just remember like squeezing my dad's hand and they were like, try and talk to your dad. Just be like, "Hey Sid, can you hear our voice?" And I remember being like, "Hey Dad, like it's Matty, like can you hear my voice?" Like he was like unconscious, like he was in a fucking induced coma, and he started squeezing my hand, bro. Oh, wow. And I was like, he started squeezing all of our hands, and I was like, "Dad, if you can hear my voice, if you know it's your son, just like give me a squeeze my hand back." And he started squeezing my hand, and I was like, this guy is the fucking Terminator, bro.
fried, bro.
That's what we call my dad. We call him the Terminator, bro, because he's just his will to live and God's, grace upon his life. He's just a Terminator, bro. Whatever it was, he didn't die.
So how did you feel toward your dad before this phone call?
I
Where
think
were you at before then, and then obviously after you felt a little bit different?
All the anger and pain, I think, was when I was 14, 15, 16. And then I sort of just started forgetting about it. I was like, you know what, maybe a couple of years I'll start to speak to my dad. But I never made an active effort to pursue that relationship. And
So
I
it was
think
just like, whatever.
it was just like whatever. It was just like whatever. But again, my uncle was down there and he's like, he looked me in the eye and he's like, your dad's going to live. And I'm like,
Bro.
I was like, I don't know, man. He's like, nah, he's gonna leave, bro.
I don't know, man.
I was like, I don't know about that, man. I was like, he's paying 10 to 1 to be fucking, he's paying $1.50 to be dead in the next half an hour, but he didn't die.
Wow. And he's like, now is he like, he can speak, he's fully
he can walk again, talk again, completely coherent. Again, not as sharp as he once was. Definitely not as sharp as he once was.
You'd hope not, or you'd think he's actually supernatural.
Yeah, that's right. Superman.
They're not working anymore, but like, I take him out to the beach, I take him to Bible studies, I take him to go hang out, we go get dinner together. Like, he's really, really great. But essentially, like, after that had happened, I went back to Sydney, came back to Melbourne, and then they were giving us updates over the phone. They're like, oh, your dad's eyes are open, because his eyes weren't open for, a month or so. And then I remember going down to Melbourne. I was like very emotional because I was like, fuck, I hope my dad like recognizes
remembers
me, remembers who I am.
Yeah.
I remember walking into the room and then his eyes were open and he smiled at me and I just fucking cried, bro.
Wow,
like I was just like, I just hugged him and I just gave him a kiss and I was just like, even I think that was a healing moment in itself, because it was like whatever he could have possibly done to me or to my family, or he did, and then as a result, things happened to our life. All of that was
almost
forgiven.
gone.
It was
So
almost
you're
gone.
like literally like
It was
it's
almost
crazy
gone.
how
That's a deep emotion.
Yeah,
eh?
man.
That's a fucking deep
because it's
emotion.
like, no matter, and this like fuck, man, what a fucking crazy story. Still way more questions on it, but I'm
Mate,
sure we'll get to that in other.
I'll get to it
at some point.
At some point
Down the
later
track.
down the track. But fast forward a couple of years, he went to Royal Rehabilitation in Putney, learned how to walk again, talk again, blah 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 blah, and now he's living a relatively normal life.
Yeah.
Thank
Man,
God.
when you hear shit like that, you think to yourself, and for someone like me, it's different because I haven't had something like that happen, right? But like I've always thought to myself, in an idealistic way, like when I see people and their relationships are soured, I literally think to myself, what would you do if that person was on their deathbed? Like, would you still
100%.
hold firm on this stance? And I feel like, I mean, you're living proof of like how that no matter what's happened, someone's existence comes into question, and
Yeah.
like
And
all
then
of a
you're
sudden
there.
that sets.
But what's the story like when you talk about, or what's the saying when you say, holding a grudge against someone or holding anger against someone is like drinking poison and hoping that they die?
Correct.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is for you, not for the other person.
so
Do you know what I
true.
mean? And
So
then it's
true.
so true. And I think like for whatever reason they kept him here, like he's here for a reason. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't by chance that he survived. And I think had he passed, and maybe I didn't get that opportunity to heal those scars, but it's teaching me the lesson of forgiveness. You know what I mean? And to heal that relationship, and I guess to not, like you said, to not hold that grudge. If he went on to pass and I had all of those, unaddressed feelings
Bro,
or
you might
emotions,
have hated yourself.
I would have hated myself.
Yeah,
I would have hated, I would have maybe had even
That
more
deep
hatred
regret.
for him, deep regret. And thank God that he's still here. And I think like, again, that's like my relationship with God came as a result of that. Do you know what I mean? And I think like my relationship with my creator is like, wow, he gave me that opportunity to have my dad around for such a long time, and life can be taken like that.
Yeah.
And you tell anyone else, like the doctors were like, how is he alive?
Yeah.
Like he got shot
Bro,
in the head at
they
point
would've had
blank
to-
range.
they would've had to
Mate,
tell
I'm
you
telling
as
you,
well.
he had fragment of bullet all around his brain. Like they were like, he had fragment of bullet for months
Unbelievable.
around his head. So fucking like.
But that's like,
praise the Lord, bro.
I forget the guy's name. I think his name is Jesse Itzler or something like that. He's an entrepreneur in America. And he was on a podcast and he was talking about relationships. And he was talking about your parents, right? Parents and or grandparents. And he was saying, he was going through, I think he was asking the podcast host, and he was saying, so how many times do you see your parents? A year.
Yeah.
And he's like, once a year. And he said, okay, well, how old are your parents? He's like 70 or 80. Okay, so they're going to live to like maybe 80, 85. That's maybe 10, 15 years. So if you see them once a year, you're going to see them 10 more times.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, you're going
And
to
that's
see them
not even
10
guaranteed.
more times. And that's not even guaranteed.
It's crazy, man.
Right? So because obviously that's in the entrepreneurship world, like you're just so busy, the whole message was, okay, so whenever you can see your parents, whenever you can see your grandparents, and obviously things are going to happen in life where people are unfortunately, go a different way. But you're gonna make sure that you're gonna be seeing these people as much as you can in the times that you can see them, and spend that time and be mindful about having that time with them as much as you can. So I think about like my mum, for example, the time that I missed, more so time with them, my dad, my sister, and then also I've got one grandparent who's still alive, who lives in Perth now. So I'm starting to think about that a little bit more, about when can I go to see him? And again, you don't want to talk about it as in like, oh, he's near the end now, but you never know when you're going to get that last opportunity to
100%.
see grandparents, but then also like your parents, especially at our age now.
Bro,
our parents are still young.
But even like they're still young. But man, like even now I see that my dad, and he's just that touch slower than he used to be. My mum, and they're starting to get older, and it's I'm conscious that they're not getting any younger, and I'm constantly reminding myself that one day that day will come fucking sooner than you probably think, because time just goes quicker as you get older for whatever reason.
You're busier, you get busy. Family
exactly. So like that stuff is it's sad,
precious.
but it's so true. And I saw that thing where those charts where it's like how you see your mate once every 3 months. If you're this age, this is how many more times you're going to see them. 50 times, which is crazy to think that I'll see like one of my best mates, Adrian, like maybe I'll only see him another 40 times ever. Like it's fucking crazy.
When you quantify it like that, it opens your eyes a little bit more.
Yeah, but I saw those graphs as well. I don't know if you saw the same one where they look at the graph of your lifespan and they go, okay, your friends, okay, this is what happens. You have, in high school, like you have your friends, and then through your 20s, but then it starts to drop off as you get married, starts to drop off as you get older. So it's family, then it's friends, and then it goes through these sort of significant people in your life, or relationships in your life. And for me, like 180, this whole crew that we've got here, it's actually quite good for me, because for the 10 years that I was working as a PT, I would not be in any relationships except for my wife. I was like 100% hustle and grind, don't go anywhere, don't see anybody. And I've sort of done that sort of 180. 180, where now it's like, okay, well, I've really found this great group of people that I connected with, and I want to spend, and that's why coming back and having coffee, like I don't drink coffee, I don't have anything at the cafe, like I just sit there and drink my water bottle, but I'm like, well, this is a time that I want to be here and present in this time to be able to build those relationships. And also whenever there's something on, I'm like, I'll go. Because I'm sort of changed that sort of perspective. And
you were saying like, in your PT life, you were like kind of solo, and I feel the exact same way. And for me, because I work remotely, I work remotely, and I have been for a little while now, whereas I was in the office, obviously full time, like most people back in the pre-COVID days. And God, I love that environment, and I'm definitely an extrovert, by nature. And I feel like that environment that we have
facilitates that.
Yeah, it gives me that dose of the relationships that it fills that kind of, not void, but it gives me that dose of relationships that I had previously, but I get that now every day through the gym, or and it's interesting how when some of those relationships in your life lack or disappear, everyone will be able to speak to this. Whenever something lacks, something tends to take its place, whatever it may be.
Which is often not a good. It can be a beautiful and great thing, but sometimes you lose your relationship with your mother, your father. Fill it with drugs, fill it with alcohol, fill it with shit.
Yeah, that's probably what I did as well. Like that was for me. Like alcohol was a big thing for me when I turned 16. So I used to binge drink quite a bit. I mean, again, another topic for another podcast. But 100%. Like that could be. It can go either way.
Even on the topic of relationships, it's like there's relationships that we have that maybe last their whole life, that we love that person or that group of people and we're always with them. Then there's relationship that turns to the shit. That's never thing. But I think the beautiful thing is relationships that have been restored. You know what I mean? When you have gone through that, emotional turmoil, or that, maybe that one event that fucked things up and you guys, hate each other. But then when the restoration happens, it's such a beautiful thing.
It grows back stronger.
It grows back stronger, 100%. And I can speak testament to that, man.
Not to take it back to like a gym analogy by any means, but once like
tear the muscle fiber
grows back stronger. And I 100% agree with that. And often that often some of the people that maybe have really the strongest of relationships, and even in marriage, man, like when you have those really heavy moments, when Chris and I have had really a bad moment or a bad time or a really bad day, whenever we've come back from that, it's that tension and that kind of that friction has created something stronger when we've kind of resolved it, and ultimately
You learn from it.
we've created some muscle
Yeah.
memory from it, and we've now learned more about each
Yeah,
other.
grow
So,
from it.
Something I was always just like, that's a really interesting point, I think, is like nowadays when you have that, I think in culture, there's this idea that family isn't as important as it is. And I think to me, family is just so important.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have certain things that happen, obviously I'm all for, going your separate ways if it means that it's a toxic environment and relationship to be in. But I feel like in culture today, we promote so much about individualism and, be who you are and be unapologetically you and, express yourself. But I think who we are, it's so important to be able to like go back to your family and go back to your roots.
But
And
who
just
we
also-
are
but
generally
also-
comes back to
yeah.
your family roots.
But that's the thing.
Like
The thing
how
is,
you grew up.
there's
100%.
always those people, and look, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's people who say this that do have family, but if there's obviously people out there that don't have that strong family unit.
Yeah.
Something really bad's happened to their family. They're not associated with it. I know that a guy I used to work with is similar situation where he literally didn't have any contact with his family and I feel like it's certainly like a human condition that when we don't have something, we'll find a way to kind of compensate for that in another way. And if people have to speak their truth in the sense that, it's going to be very difficult for someone to go and tell themselves all day, every day or every week, family's really important. I don't have it. No,
Yeah.
the message they're going to tell themselves
That's
is,
right.
I had, my family, what's that thing that talks about, friends are the family you choose. There's
Right,
quotes,
right.
So I get how people are kind of, they
Trying to find it
they
a
default
different
to
way.
that because what are they going to do? Like tell themselves, nah,
Of course,
you're
of course.
fucked. You know what I mean?
Of course, and that's why I count my lucky stars that I do have that. And for those out there that don't have that, then definitely like my heart goes out to you.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
But it's the other side of it when you don't want to take that for granted. When you do have
And we
that family
do.
But
connection.
also
and,
too, I feel like there's a big percentage, or maybe not a big percentage, but there's definitely a considerable percentile of those people that they've had those things, but maybe it's their own pride or their own ego or their family's own pride or own ego that's actually stopping that relationship from being restored. And as time goes on, maybe they then have the capacity to be able to have that forgiveness in their heart.
Yeah, and it comes down to pride, humility, all those
Yeah.
like tenets that we talk about that that are really
Another thing
important
as
to
well,
us.
like in terms of those relationships, whether they're going to be good or bad, like relationships come and go. Like you hold on to the ones that are going to help you grow and move with you, and sometimes the relationships aren't going to work, and that's okay. It's okay to be able to have those things, but being able to learn from the relationships that you have had, and then when you go into having these new relationships, like you said, you can take into those relationships the learnings that and the growth from those previous
Well,
relationships.
let's
right. I
practice
just
what
think
we
that-
preach. If anything happens between us, make sure we just
Yeah,
And
be
look,
honest.
this is one thing on that topic. Like you said, like people move on and they learn and grow, and that is so true. One thing I feel like I've gotten like unbelievably better at over the years is when something's gone not sour, but if I've had a disagreement, whatever with someone, I say to myself, I know that the bigger the ravine is between us, the longer we haven't spoken, the longer we haven't, it's going to get harder and harder. And I always say to myself,
Nip it in the bud.
have I done everything in my power to let this person know that I'm trying to heal the bond?
Yeah.
Have I personally done everything I can? Because if I have, then I can wash my hands. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect at it.
Because if you're the only one doing it, then it's
Exactly. But at least if you're the only one doing it, you can go and say, you know what, man,
I did my part.
I did
You did your
everything I
part,
could.
yeah.
I fucking love you. And I've tried.
Yeah.
Like, and you can even, I found myself even saying that to people. Like I'm trying my best here to like drop my pride in its entirety. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I do it every time and it's easy, but I feel like often when you have those times where maybe you don't end up speaking to someone or a relationship gets cut off, you'll almost feel like, wow, was this always just going to happen at some point with this person? Because
was it just going
if
to
they're
fizzle?
Was it going to fizzle? Because, or if they're not putting in that, they're clearly not putting in their effort here. Were they looking for a reason for this to?
Trying to
Because
get out.
sometimes when something happens to someone, you're like, man, like this is not that big a thing.
Yeah.
Or was this person looking for a
way out?
Yeah, looking for a way out, or
Yeah.
looking for
Yeah.
But
An
it also
excuse.
comes back down to their communication. Like if somebody's begrudged by something that you've done, a lot of the time they won't talk about it. They won't say anything. They'll just fade into the background and stop seeing you, or they'll stop messaging you. But it's like, man, like, that's where that ego needs to be dropped and go, okay, well, I need to have a conversation with this person to let them know that this thing that happened bugs me or got to me or whatever it is, so they can actually move forward and resolve it. Because sometimes when you move away from a relationship that's actually really good, you'll pull away from it later on down the track. You'll be like, man, that was actually a really good relationship. If I had taken the time, as you just said, to bridge that gap, maybe you would have been in a better position.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think over time, like exactly what you said, you get to a point where you go, the emotions are high now, but you got to fast forward, like not necessarily to death, but fast forward a couple of years. Are you still going to be feeling the same way, or are you going to be at that, past the point of no return? I've got family of mine who I know, man. I know that they would want to heal, but it's so fucking far gone now.
Oh yeah.
Past that point of no return, where like there's things that have been said that neither party would say, and I'm saying I would in an ideal world think I would want to heal that, but I'm not them. I don't know what it's like. So. Yeah. Anyway,
But
look, there's
A lot of ego in that, but
so much ego in that.
One relationship I think we're all thankful for is our beautiful listeners. Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Let's give them a bit of a
Thank you.
hand out to
round of
this.
applause.
There it is.
thank you,
We've
Dropouts.
I know this is a slightly longer episode, so we won't hold it against you for.
If you did make it to the
skipping
end of the
forward.
episode, drop a comment, please, as well. It
You'll
helps
get a
us so
star.
much. Subscribe on YouTube,
Yeah.
follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all
And
the outlets.
Also, let us know about our new setup.
Yeah, what do you reckon?
What do you think?
of the,
What are your
the-
thoughts?
The setup, and I
Yeah.
think I think this is good, right?
flow-
And again,
good.
I think it's great. I think we accept t-shirts as well. So if you want to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Toddy Williams,
Yeah.
TRW Metalworks,
Toddy.
brother.
shout
Toddy.
out sponsor for today, TRW.
Yeah.
Only one
buddies.
of us got a t-shirt. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you here
Yeah.
next
Catch
week.
you on
Episode
episode
six.
6. Let's
Let's
go.
go.
Yeah, the boys.